All right, folks, a quick message before we get started from our sponsors, React Health. React Health, formerly 3B Medical, a leading provider of sleep diagnostic, and respiratory products. Now back to the show.
All right. It's another show, and you know what that means. It's time for pre-cals. All right, gents, what's happening?
Hey guys, we've got Elie Gottlieb, Dr. Elie Gottlieb from SleepScore Labs with us today. This is another one of those situations where we have invited someone who's extremely much smarter than we are, and I think we're going to learn a lot today. I remember back when SleepScore was first formed as a company. It was a joint venture between Dr. Oz and ResMed. I don't know what the ownership structure looks like today, but it's going to be interesting. I know they've got some no contact monitors and apps that they use to help improve patients with their sleep, but I think he's going to be a great guest for us and share a lot of helpful information for us.
A scientist, huh? Sleep scientist. That sounds really interesting, really exciting. When you said way smarter than all of us, it doesn't take much to be way smarter than me. I can tell you that right now. So
well, it's going to be fun to just hear what he has to say, because when you look at all that our listeners have to manage with technology, I think it can be daunting. And I can't imagine being a sleep educator and having someone walk in with an Oura Ring and a Fitbit and everything else, and then really trying to manage that. And I would probably be one of those people, because we're all kind of nerdy like that. But right. Yeah, I just can't imagine what our colleagues have to deal with so much information coming at them.
Hey, I'd wear my Apple Watch at night if it didn't have to charge.
Now that you said that, I think there was a time when I would sleep with the Fitbit. I lost it. I don't know where the hell it is anymore. But I think there was a time when I used to have that just to see what it was doing and compare it to my poor knowledge of sleep health.
Well, I've got an Oura Ring, and even though I think it's interesting data, I know enough about sleep to be a little bit kind of thrown off by what I read and thinking it can't be right. But I just imagine being a patient with no knowledge of sleep, bringing that in with this dogmatic point of view of, this is how I'm sleeping. My Oura Ring said so. And, what are you going to do, doctor, with the information I've just given you? And then, so it'll be fun to hear about how our guests can talk about how these things can fit together.
Robert, you were just about to say something?
No, Emerson covered it. We're good. Let's jump into the show. This is good stuff. Let's before we over talk and think we have an idea of what he's going to tell us. Let's hear from him directly.
I think you're right. Overthinking is not good when it comes to smart people. So, on to the show, folks. Hold up, folks. We've got some exciting news for you right now, right here on Sleep Tech Talk. Want to let you know that we are looking for 2023's Person of the Year. That's right, Sleep Tech Talk's 2023 Person of the Year. How are we going to do that? Well, listen up. Any guest that's been on the show so far, and any guest that's going to be on our show for this year, 2023, are all nominees or all candidates for this recognition. And how you can help is by listening and or viewing that specific episode. We're going to be counting the number of plays for each episode. We're going to be counting the number of listens for each episode and taking that into consideration. If you have anybody that you think should be a candidate, let us know. And we will see what we can do to get them on board as a nominee. At the same time, we need your help to make this happen, to select that Person of the Year. Along the way, we hope to introduce some other awards as well, but in the meanwhile, do everybody a favor, do us a favor, and listen in to your favorite guest. So by early next year, 2024, we'll be announcing the winners. Now back to the show.
Like that.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the Sleep Podcast, bringing a new wavelength to sleep, sleep health, sleep medicine, and sleep technology. All right, I'm trying out a new tagline, guys, so forgive me here.
I don't know about that. That was not co-host approved.
What'd you say?
I said that wasn't co-host approved.
That was not co-host approved, but hey, we got to have something, right? And talking about co-hosts, with your friends and co-hosts, Emerson Kerr, Robert Miller, and me, Dr. Gerald George Mannikarote. Folks, we thank you so much. We're just growing and growing, all because of you. And we want you to remember to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Don't forget, most importantly, to share the podcast, share the show with with all of your friends out there. With that being said, Robert, can you tell us what's going on today?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. We have with us today Dr. Elie Gottlieb, who is a sleep neuroscientist with over 10 years of sleep, circadian rhythm, and neuroscience research experience across academia, clinical neuroscience as a specialty, and industry Fortune 100 startup. Currently, he leads applied science, sleep science at SleepScore Labs, a joint venture of ResMed, leveraging validated non-contact consumer technology and ML-driven sleep improvement features to characterize and improve population sleep health. Prior to joining SleepScore, Dr. Gottlieb led a team of researchers at J&J working on the Lake Nona Life Project, a multi-general study aimed at identifying health factors that contribute to long-term health and wellness. He remains a visiting researcher at the Florey Institute of Neuroscience and University of Melbourne in Australia, where he investigates associations between cerebrovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, and sleep-wake dysfunction. His areas of interest are in clinical sleep neuroscience, consumer sleep and health technology, big data, behavior science, change science, and science communication. I think every week, by the way, before I let you get started, Dr. Gottlieb, we seem to continue to elevate our level of intelligence here on this program. So we appreciate you joining us and elevating the discussion here today about sleep.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get the conversation going.
So before we jump into your personal story and how you got into sleep medicine, do you mind sharing with our audience a little bit more about who and what SleepScore Lab is? I know that there is the joint venture component that involves ResMed, which is interesting for sure. And I think that the company, if I remember correctly, as it started up, was a joint venture between Dr. Oz and ResMed. I think that probably has changed. Maybe it's changed over time, but tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, so SleepScore is really an end-to-end sleep company. Many of the companies in the consumer sleep tech space are sort of business to consumer, direct to consumer companies. SleepScore Labs is what's known as a B2B2C company, right? We really help other companies with our knowledge, our proprietary technology, and our data. So we have R&D innovation and sleep product consultancy services, particularly around our many strategic partnerships with companies like L'Oreal, Mattress Firm, International Flavors and Fragrances. We do some platform integration and co-branding of our app, so white labeling our technology to leading organizations. We develop really bespoke content. We have over 100 million hours of objectively measured data. So we use that to not just develop really interesting and engaging content, but also publish that, right? We say that we like to publish what we preach instead of just practicing it. So we have a really end-to-end offerings when it comes to sleep improvement. And it really at our core is our sleep measurement technology that is in some ways sort of the antithesis of polysomnography, right? That has remained this quasi gold standard since the 1960s. Really, we think that to measure sleep well, sleep should be measured in the most non-invasive way possible, in a longitudinal and ecologically valid way. And that's why we developed two pieces of technology. The first is called the SleepScore Max, and it uses radio frequency. It's a non-contact biomotion sensor that just sits on the bedside, and it uses radio frequency to gauge two things: gross body motion and respiration. And from that, we can stage sleep in a very accurate way 90+% overall accuracy and greater than 55 to 60% specificity, which is a big issue in the sleep space, as you probably know, specificity. And we have over 13 plus performance evaluation studies to date on the technology. So it's been validated in a range of populations across multiple studies. But we also know that in order to measure sleep well and scale the technology, it needs to be accessible to the average person who might not be willing to spend $150 on a specialist hardware device, which is when we developed the SleepScore app. So that essentially turns your smartphone into an active sonar device, sends inaudible sound waves to the upper area of the body, and from that, we also get gross body motion and respiration. And to our knowledge, it's really the only widely available mobile sleep app with publication of its performance against PSG showing 85% overall accuracy. So incredibly accurate piece of technology. But the truth is we are not a measurement company. We're a sleep improvement company, right? So Dr. Roy Raymond, who's one of our scientific advisors, he always says that this sort of, so what? I slept 6 hours or 5 hours. What the heck am I going to do about it? So that objectively measured data is used in a robust way as part of our advice engine. So all that objectively measured data is fed into an advice engine where then we can provide really bespoke and tailored and personalized advice to our users and to our partners as well. So that's a very high level overview of our tech. We do a lot as a company. We also have a huge R&D program as part of the company where we essentially conduct validation studies on existing consumer sleep tech. And we also power and innovate new ones. So we're, as I mentioned, end to end and doing a lot of great things in the space.
So I have noticed at the last couple of annual national sleep conferences that SleepScore Labs always seems to come with several research projects that are pretty significant from an industry standpoint. Do you guys have something in store for this year that will make a splash like you have the last couple of sleep meetings?
Yeah. So we're really proud, like I said, of our publications and our presentations of our, of some of our big data analyses and obviously the product validation studies as well. As I mentioned, we like to publish what we preach instead of just practicing it. So last year at the sleep conference alone, I think we had 14 abstracts on a range of topics. This year, I think we'll have closer to between 6 to 8. And the great thing is, as part of we have a lot of academic collaborators as well, from NASA to UNC Chapel Hill. So a lot of our academic partners who are leveraging our technology are also starting to publish some of the work based on, that used our measurement tech. So yeah, absolutely. This year will be another fantastic year at the Sleep Conference. We'll be presenting. And we're also excited to showcase some of the existing work from our academic collaborators, mainly at UW. So Nate Watson, past president of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, he's doing some really great work using our technology, both our measurement and our sleep improvement features.
So, Elie, could you tell us a little bit about, first off, amazing to hear all of this, all that's going on. How did you get into this? How did you, first off, get into sleep? I mean, that's, you're a neuroscientist who thinks of, hey, I want to research sleep. You don't hear that very often.
Yeah. I think, like many people in the sleep space now, you sort of serendipitously get thrown into it. So very nerdy story, but as during my undergraduate psychology degree and neuroscience degree, I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, and I was looking for a professor who was taking a research student to do some actual research as part of my undergrad degree, and the only person that was available was a sleep scientist, a sleep person, Dr. Suzanne Woodward, and together, we were, I think, one of the first to look at the effects of blue light on sleep. So we looked at blue light blocking lenses and an app called Flux, and sort of found what is now generally considered, common knowledge, is that excessive use of bright screens, in the hour or two before bed can potentially delay our circadian clock. and perhaps blue light filtering lenses as well can normalize that effect. So I subsequently enrolled in a psychology of dreams course, and that just fanned the flame, right? Which was sort of ironic given that most of the students in that class were very chronically sleep deprived. So it was an incredibly, edifying experience. And then from there, I was at Johnson & Johnson doing some great work on the Lake Nona Life Project, this long-term health study that was trying to replicate the Framingham Heart Study, which is sort of everything we know now about smoking causing cardiovascular disease, and what are the sort of common contributors to mortality. That really all comes from the Framingham Heart Study. So I did some great work with them and leading some sleep research and trying to uncover what happens when you live in a community that is focused around health and wellness, in homes that are built to improve overall health. Does that actually translate to improvements in behavior and cognition and health outcomes? So a bit of everything is in short, is how I got into here.
That's quite a journey. Yeah, that's quite a journey. I was curious when you bring all of that back together, and your journey with what you're doing, and then all of that you have now. How does all this translate, to listeners like ours? We've got the sleep technologists that are, listening right now. When you kind of pull your history together, how does what you're doing now, how's it relevant to what they're doing in their lives today?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think as sleep tech improves and as consumer sleep technology improves and becomes more pervasive, we really need to think beyond just clinical populations, I feel like. So really, if you're 10 to 20% of the population that has a sleep disorder, if you're a clinician or myself as a sleep scientist who's sort of, knowledgeable of the literature, you or I would know what would need to happen for this person, right? If you have obstructive sleep apnea, you need to see a doctor and you need to get treated, whether that's through CPAP or a dental appliance. If you have restless leg syndrome, you need some kind of, probably pharmacological intervention, or some kind of supplementation, or some kind of dopamine promoter. If you have severe clinical insomnia, you need CBTI. You might be more likely to get prescribed a benzodiazepine. But for the rest of the population that does not have a clinical sleep disorder, but still really struggles with staying asleep, going to sleep on time, waking up too often throughout the night, this is sort of what we call subclinical threshold sleep issues, which, depending on the study that you're looking at, is between 50 to 50+% of the global population. Where do these people go, right? For the rest of those with subclinical threshold sleep issues, there's no if this, then that, right? The system really doesn't see these individuals as sick people, and their symptoms are really so varied that they require a personalized approach to sleep improvement. There's no silver bullet. So I feel that the market is broken for these individuals, and we're missing a link for those with subclinical threshold sleep issues beyond basic sleep hygiene practices. So, that's one thing. I'm part of the California Sleep Society, and we have a ton of techs on our board as well. And we're trying to understand ways to leverage consumer sleep technology as either an adjunct therapy to existing therapies, to improve overall, behavior and healthy sleep habits, sleep and circadian habits, but also finding more, creative ways to, potentially embed this technology into measuring compliance, and other, in other ways of the clinical experience. So, on one hand, we want to obviously improve the existing care of those with sleep disorders, but also not forget about the subclinical threshold population that is sort of struggling, right? There's a lot of consumer sleep tech out there that is telling you, for example, that you're not sleeping well, but it's not telling you what to do about it. And that is potentially contributing to things like orthosomnia, right? Which is this new thing that's coming out, that where people that, especially those that might be at risk of, anxiety or other mental health issues are becoming so obsessed with measuring their sleep that it's actually worsening it, right? It's causing sort of a cyclical feedback loop. So, really going beyond sleep measurement into the sleep improvement space, not just for those who have clinical sleep disorders, but thinking more broadly about the subclinical threshold population.
I love the fact that you're looking at the total population, the preventative and social aspect of healthcare, particularly in sleep medicine when it comes to this, and the fact that you're looking at the subclinical population. Uh, what made you think in that direction? What made you go there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually think it started with inspiration from Martin Seligman and the field of positive psychology. So just some background, Martin Seligman is sort of the founder of this field of positive psychology. And he was the past president of the American Psychological Association. And what he essentially found was that, there's been so much research and clinical care into those who have mental health issues, essentially getting someone from -20 to 0. But instead of trying to treat the sick, how do we essentially foster genius? And how do we get someone who is doing okay to great? So instead of getting someone from -20 to 0, how do we get someone from 0 to +20? And that started this whole, field of scientific study of happiness. And I actually think there's a lot of parallels in the sleep space. We know that there's some research now on the effects of mindfulness meditation on sleep, even gratitude and sleep. These are some sort of out there ideas, but there's a lot of synergy between the two spaces. And just like conceptually thinking, a lot of people don't, again, have a primary sleep disorder, but they still want to improve their sleep. And there's no clear pathway to do that right now. So it sort of started with the field of positive psychology, leveraging, non-invasive, potentially non-pharmacological approaches to improving overall sleep health and circadian health as well. I think that's an understudied area, the circadian space.
So, Elie, who would you say would be the target group to take a look at adding SleepScore to their program? Sleep labs, physician practices, DMEs. What will be the group that you guys would want to reach out and make contact with you to talk about the program? Because this seems like it could be an adjunct to the work that's already being done by many sleep providers, sleep labs, and DME companies.
Yeah, exactly. I think anyone who's looking to add an evidence-based approach to improving overall sleep health in their population. So if you're essentially treating a sleep disorder with a pharmacological agent or some kind of device, but you see that group or individual is still they're still suffering from either poor sleep hygiene, poor sleep habits, or unrefreshing sleep, that's looking to take a more personalized approach, not just to sleep improvement, but also to measuring, right? To measuring their own sleep. Because we always say, if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. So for any group that's really looking to add an evidence-based approach to overall sleep health, I would love to have a conversation with them.
So, Doc, unfortunately, we're out of time. And back in my clinical practice, one of the things that really fascinated me was circadian rhythms. And I wish we had more time to talk about it. But is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you really want to let the audience know before we say goodbye?
Yeah, no, I wish we would have spoken about circadian rhythms as well, because I think it's an underutilized space, especially as a way to, at least in the consumer space, not just improve health and wellness, but optimize, cognition, physical activity, and really personalize timing of recommendations on a day-to-day basis. So I would love, if you'd have me back one day, I'd love to discuss the circadian space. One thing I would just highlight is, again, remember those that don't have a clinical sleep disorder that are still really struggling to get their either their quality sleep or quantity of sleep. And there are evidence-based ways that are non-invasive measurement technologies that are non-contact to either measure or improve. So I'm excited to see what the future of sleep tech holds, and I'm really excited to and grateful to be on here to speak with you about it.
Hey, we thank you for being on here. We're just as excited about the future of sleep technology, and that's why we have this show. And those of you who are listening on the podcast and not watching it on YouTube, Doctor here doesn't look like your typical scientist. He has great hair, cool accessories, an awesome beard that competes with mine. So I just want to say, you've got to jump onto YouTube and check him out. Okay. And but Doc, we're so thankful that you joined us. We sincerely appreciate you being here. We too are grateful that you joined us, and we just might have you back to talk about circadian rhythms. It'll be fun to have that conversation as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do for the overall population health, sleep health space and the sleep tech space as a whole as well. So thank you so much for having me, and hopefully talk to you soon again.
Oh, thank you. And thank all of you. All of you are doing exactly what Doc just said. We appreciate what you all do for the sleep industry, for the sleep health, overall sleep health of the entire population, and for sleep technology. And we thank you so much for listening to our show. Please, once again, don't forget to smash that like button. Don't forget to give us the star ratings, whatever it is, whatever platform you guys are looking at, comments, all that stuff. Most importantly, please do share this. We can't grow without you. And until next time, we just want to say thank you and lights on.
All right, folks, a quick message from our sponsors, React Health. React Health, formerly 3B Medical, a leading provider of sleep diagnostic, and respiratory products. Now back to the show.
All right. Man, post-cals, that was a lot. That was a lot. Time flew by, and he used a lot of big words. I felt like I needed to refer to my old SAT booklet, 1,100 words you need to know for your SAT.
Yes.
That's how I felt. What'd you guys think?
I want to start off with this just because I want to make sure that the audience heard this message that SleepScore Labs, the company and the products and services they have, could be an add-on to your current sleep program. So, definitely visit their website. When we post the podcast, we'll post a link to their website. But, give those guys a call and see where their program may, support some of the things that you're doing in the sleep lab, in the sleep physician's office, and also at the home medical equipment providers.
That's a great point, Robert. And I just want the audience to know this episode is not sponsored. They're not a sponsor of our show. It's just we think that technology is really cool. Just talking to Dr. Gottlieb, it just sounds so fascinating, and it sounds like it could be an adjunct to what you have going on already.
When you think about one of the things we heard when we talked to one of our other guests about some of these wearables, and we heard this from Dr. Gottlieb, is validated, tools. This is one of those tools that's been researched, it's been validated, and so much of what our listeners, patients have to manage is them bringing in tools that don't have that validation, don't have those proofs. And so I think that's something that really stood out to me, is this is technology they can lean on, independently verified and validated, as an adjunct to their care, as you were pointing out, Robert, and just helping them really help that patient navigate the plethora of data that's out there about how they could or couldn't be sleeping well. So, what a great asset to our sleep educators, sleep coaches, sleep doctors that are out there trying to help their patients navigate the labyrinth of over-the-counter diagnostic, or not even diagnostic, but tools for looking at sleep.
When you say that reminds me of my biggest takeaway from our conversation was the ability to reach out to those patients, the subpathological patient groups, the ones that don't have the typical symptoms that they would go into the doctor for, and how could we educate them? We've had some guests on our show that go out and do this for a living, teach people how to sleep well, or teach organizations how to sleep well, and they're doing really well because they're reaching out to the general public. One of our friends from the show, she regularly appears on the local news talking about it. And something like this, product could definitely help with that, to reach a wider group of people, a wider population, and help improve that overall education and knowledge of sleep health. To me, that was probably the biggest takeaway for me and the most fascinating thing, the ability to
We
reach
definitely need to bring
that
him
population.
back on that subclinical aspect, because that's where I was like, oh my gosh, we need another 20 minutes just to talk about that.
Exactly.
Because you think about the number of patients that are sleepy, can't fall asleep. You know, they have one of the either sleep disorder breathing or waking disorder, and there's really not a good answer for them. And because they don't meet the standard criteria, it's like I was sharing with a group the other day, you know, just with obstructive sleep apnea, that original testing was based on older white men.
Right.
That leaves out people of color, younger white men, all women. You know, so when we begin to look at these categories now around the phenotypes and everything, these kind of tools are just become priceless, because it really opens up the world for our clinicians to really be assets to their patients and do more than we've ever been able to do before.
Robert, are you pondering something? It sounds like your wheels are turning there.
Yeah.
Or it looks like, rather.
Yeah, no,
It's like.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm just thinking that, you know, I could see, you know, everything that I talk about, I think seems to go back to inpatient sleep apnea screening. And I could see uses for some of that no contact, at least to, you know, as a pre-screening, you know, while the patient's in the hospital. So it's not one more thing that they have to wear while they're there. But if there is an 85% correlation to, you know, in-lab PSG, that would be a fantastic tool.
I love that.
To use patients in the hospital.
I love that. That's just on the bedside, and they can monitor the patient while they are there. That's a fantastic idea.
I don't have one of the new models, but I do have one of the older S Plus. I don't know if you guys remember when ResMed came out with the S Plus. So that has become part of the fleet, I think, for SleepScore Labs. And when you were able to pull up the app and watch your actual breathing, you know, respirations on the screen, and there's no belts connected to you. It's pretty amazing technology.
That is really cool. That is really cool. With that, on a cool note, you guys ready to close?
Yeah.
All right. I think
late in the day.
Late in the day,
we got it.
Yeah, I think we're all exhausted here, but folks, we're not exhausted with you. We want you to keep coming back.
Nice save.
And we're going to come back with more episodes for you. We've got a ton of guests lined up, and we're excited to bring them on. But until next time, we want to say thank you so much for joining us once again. Thank you so much for all the love you've shared with us. Please don't forget to share the love with everybody else and get more people talking about Sleep Tech Talk, because that's what it's about. It's about the talk and walking the talk. And until next time, cheers.